The voice of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Breakfast Call. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And we are back with Durian ASEAN. Again, today is a beautiful Thursday. Finally, Gowri is back.
Yes, I'm back from my long trip to Indonesia, and also I started my classes yesterday in so it's back to juggling work and classes.
No
and all
longer
that.
your beautiful holidays.
Yeah, no.
But I'm sure you had fun, isn't it?
I did have a lot of fun in Indonesia. I've been there before, and it's a very, very beautiful place. I was really excited about going back there, and no regrets. It was beautiful. I had a lot of fun. It was great to see all my old friends again, and yeah, it was a beautiful experience.
Indonesia is definitely one of the up-and-coming tourist destination, but also up-and-coming that will be kickstarting is the Incheon ASEAN Games.
Yes, it's the 17th Asian Games that's happening again, and it's a big thing in this region to have these ASEAN. Now I'm saying ASEAN Games, Asian Games, and it is.
Yeah, I keep on saying ASEAN, Asian.
Yeah, because that's right, because you love ASEAN, and well, it's the official name for this is the 17th Asian Games, Asian 2014, and it will be happening from the 19th of September all the way to the 4th of October, about 16 days, and of course it's happening in the Asian metropolitan city with about almost 13,000 athletes and officials and 7,000 media from 45 national Olympic committees.
Mm-hmm. And in the past, the Guangzhou Asian Games in 2010, of course, China took the lead with the most medals. And subsequently, the subsequent one would be Korea, Japan, and I think it's Iran. But for the upcoming one, probably Malaysia could make into the top 10, who knows, in terms of medals. And probably Korea could beat up China since it is held in Korea.
Well, China is a very strong country when it comes to sporting events. They have some amazing athletes there. And in Malaysia, we are not doing so bad as well, apart from the gold medal issue that we had in the recent Olympics. But like you said, we can buck up. We can have we do have a good chance trying to win medals in the Asian Games.
Mm-hmm. So apart from Asian Games, a lot of things were happening in this country. The biggest report that I would say the biggest headline of yesterday and today would be the forced labor that is rife in Malaysia electronics factories. And this report is apparently sponsored under the US Embassy.
Well, actually, if you ask me, I would say the biggest news from this morning would be Man City losing to Bayern Munich. But I will not go there as much as I'm disappointed. So yes, this survey by Berit, which is an international labor rights group, found that the abuse of workers' rights, particularly tens and thousands of people from low-wage countries like Nepal, Myanmar, Indonesia, was rife in a US 75 billion sector that is a mainstay of the Southeast Asian country's export-driven economy.
I would like to correct myself. It's not funded by the US Embassy, but the US Department of Labor. I don't know why whenever I think of US Department, I think about US Embassy. About the survey, nearly a third of some 350,000 workers in Malaysia's electronic industry, which are majority of them of foreign companies, a crucial link to the international consumer supply chain, suffer from conditions of modern-day slavery, such as debt bondage, according to a study as what is being reported by how do you pronounce it? Virait, is it?
It can be pronounced any way we like.
I'll call it Virait. So Virat didn't single out any companies in its report. It included companies that also are from US, Europe, Japan, South Korea, and also majority of them are multinationals operating in Malaysia, including, I have to name the brands, Samsung Electronics, Sony Corporation, Advanced Micro Device, Intel, and Bosch Limited.
This study comes 3 months after Malaysia was downgraded to the Tier 3 in the US State Department's annual Trafficking in Persons report, which cited a lack of progress in protecting the rights of about 4 million foreign workers that we apparently have here.
We have a lot of foreign workers.
And we are really not good with protecting their rights.
We went down one tier, and that's a huge deal when it comes to the tiering system. If we went up one tier down, that means that you are no better than China.
But if even looking at it that way, it's not only about the foreign workers' right. We also have a lot of Malaysian workers who don't even know what their rights are, where they the condition is pretty much the same. They work very long hours, they don't get paid well, and they are just being slaved away. So yes, it's happening a lot to the foreign workers largely because they're uneducated, or they just don't have enough education to know what they can demand for.
The system itself do not allow such rights to occur, because then it will be a huge problem for this organization or corporation to function. All they need is labor. They don't really see that beyond that. They don't see the importance of quality of living and all that. Other companies that are also part of the studies and are also being branded as the culprit are big brands such as Flextronic Venture Corporation, Jabil Circuit, and JCY International to make parts of smartphones, computers, and printers.
These workers need to really come up with something. I mean, it's okay for them to come to Malaysia. It's something that's normal when you go to another country to look for a better living, to get a higher pay, but not at the expense of your own basic rights being abused, where you don't get your food, your shelter. You know, we know that these people live in terrible conditions in very small apartments.
These are some of the basic rights that were really being challenged by these workers when the moment they enter Malaysia. Number one, the worker's passport would be confiscated by recruitment firms, which is in fact illegal in Malaysia. And in fact, some firm might charge more than $1,000 for a worker to borrow his or her passport. That is insane.
It is, and they cannot leave the country whenever they want, even when they are being abused. They want to make a police report, they want to go away. It's so hard for them because they do not have their passport or any identification because it's been confiscated by their employers.
What's worse is the moment if they intend to work in Malaysia, the broker they have to pay an average of 2,985 ringgit Malaysia to broker in their home country. And in Malaysia, as payment for their passage and jobs, why you need to pay for your job? You should work. I mean, companies should feel privileged that they have workers to work for them. They shouldn't ask these workers to pay just to work for them. That's insane.
But it's probably the case where they just tell the employers, like, okay, I can do anything you want me to, and you can just pay me whatever amount you want. They don't actually demand for what they want. They don't say that this is, how many hours I'm going to work in a week, and this is how much you're going to pay me unless I'm not going to work here. That doesn't happen because these people are usually really desperate to just come here and try to make a living out of it.
What's even crazier is that a lot of these migrant workers work 60 hours overtime a week. Is more than industry's international standard limits, and Malaysian law allow employees to clock up to 72 hours of overtime. That's a lot of time. Malaysian government really needs to back up in terms of strengthening the labor law in this country.
Yes, not only for foreigners, but also for our local Malaysians. Because there are a lot of people who are slaving away and they just don't know what their rights are. They don't know what they that what they can demand from their bosses.
Another issue that is crippling Malaysians earlier on would probably be more towards the immigrants, but another issue is the GST. So there's a petrol GST dilemma in this country.
So they were contemplating going back and forth on this for the last few days, but it seems that they have decided that the petrol will not be exempted from GST, and a lot of people are not too happy about this decision by the government.
Would you be too happy?
I don't drive, so it really doesn't affect me. You can answer this question, Arlene.
No question, no answers for this. But however, economists feel that the list of zero-rated items should not get increasingly longer, lest it defeats the purpose of GST, which will come into force, unfortunately, on April 1 next year. And meanwhile, the Great Vision Advisory Group Executive Director cum Head of Tax and Financial Planning. Wow, this person has a long title. Chua Tian Guan said that cases in Singapore and New Zealand where GST is imposed on the majority of items, but their governments provide certain forms of aid to the needy.
He also said
it's like their version of BRIM, I suppose, when it comes to aid.
But he also said that Malaysia should follow them and follow suit and keep the number of zero-rated items to the minimum and keep providing aid to the poor via channels such as One Malaysia's People's Aid, which is BRIM. It doesn't seem like he likes Malaysia very much, because we have been trying to do away with BRIM. If not everyone, at least a certain group of people have spoken out against BRIM to say how ineffective it is, and in the end it goes back to raising more taxes because they have to make up for all this money that they spent on people.
The thing is, it's not whether BRIM is needed or not. It's about trying to create a more equal society. Let's face it, the world will never be equal. There will always be the poor and the rich. But you need to close the gap where the poor are not too poor to the extent that they can't afford to live a life, everyday's life, or to afford a meal and a shelter. So in that sense, the government should use BRIM, but as an affirmative action, not as a long-term policy. For the long-term policy, the structure need to be put in place, meaning that society have to receive a decent amount of wages or a decent amount of living of living essentials such as shelter and all that. And these are much more, I would say, a much more long-term and it is an issue that the government should focus more on the long term. Of course, BRIM would be an easier way for the government to settle any issue related to poverty.
A lot of times we do resort to the quickest and the fastest way to solve a problem. For example, let me just go out of context. If a pipe is broken, instead of fixing it, instead of getting someone in to replace the whole thing, we just try to wrap it up with a cloth or something. And of course, that is a temporary solution, but that is not effective and it won't hold out for long. And that's the similar situation in this country. Yes, we can give out this free aid, this free cash vouchers to people, but it will not sustain the livelihood of people. And even just giving out of 250 or 300 ringgit, how much does that actually help the people? Because it's not a very huge amount, and when you give it to them, they get dependent on it, and they just keep hoping it every year. Before this, we didn't have BRIM, and people will somehow make it work without that, trying to save their money or trying to come up with other ways to solve the problem. But now they're just waiting for free cash to be handed out by the government.
Guess who is having free cash here? Indonesia. Because Mitsubishi is investing $600 million in Indonesian plant for new cars. And apparently the Mitsubishi Motors Corp is leading $600 million investment in Indonesia to build a factory and develop a new car. as the Japanese automaker seeks to expand and growing increasingly competitive in the auto market business. The pack of auto sales growth in Indonesia has been easing this year as the economy has slowed down, but the chief executive, his name is Osamu Masuko, said that boosting volume in one of the world's most populous country was crucial for its long-term growth.
When in Indonesia, you never see any Proton car, you never see a lot of other cars. You see a lot of Mitsubishi, you see a lot of Toyotas, and they just love their SUVs over there. They don't even...
Yeah, SUVs, you're right about that.
And they don't even go for sedans. They want these big cars. They want to have these four-wheel drives.
But it is also because they don't have the kind of tax system for cars compared to Malaysia. You can buy a car at a price where you buy a Proton or Myvi.
That's right. That's probably why they don't want to buy a Proton, and they want to have their own sort of identity there. They don't want to be associated with us Malaysians that much, but
so there's a form of nationalism there.
It is. It definitely is. And also, going back to this article, it seems that Japan's second-tier car makers, including Mitsubishi Motors, which sells a little over 1 million vehicles globally, are betting on growth in Southeast Asia to compensate for the shrinking sales in their aging domestic market.
So Japanese companies or Japanese firms are definitely looking outside the world and their own territory. And of course, emerging economies are always the best bet. For more matured economies, usually they would be more sustainable. Like they would focus more on things like bicycles, public transportation and all that. But emerging economies, a car is a symbol of status. When you have a car, it symbolizes that you are either middle class or upper middle class. Because in an emerging economies, usually you will not have that very good system of public transportation. And Mitsubishi is coming in as a foreign investment in Indonesia, appears to be picking up, fueled by the hopes of reform after Joko Widodo was elected as the president. Talking about Joko Widodo, he's currently forming his own cabinet team. He will be in office soon, in November, in November. And although there's still no clarity in terms of Jokowi's cabinet, whether his cabinet is clean or not.
And among the changes that will be the split of the current education ministry into two ministries. One is to oversee primary and secondary education, and another is for tertiary education, which will also be merged with the existing research and technology ministry. And we remember very clearly when during Jokowi's election campaign, he was stressing a lot on education, and he is making some actions towards trying to improve the education state in the country.
Interesting, the split of the education ministry into two ministries. Same as Malaysia, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And also the Jokowi administration wanted to ensure a healthy and educated population, like we mentioned earlier. And the transition team reveals details about the new cabinet. Officials have acknowledged that the new general disappointment on Monday's announcement is that 16 out of 34 ministers would come from political parties.
So, PDIP Secretary General Jajo Kumolo, he tried with little apparent success to clarify Joko's remark on Monday, differentiating between professionals for the important ministries and the party professionals for the other ministries. He said that my take on his statement is that he didn't mean for there to be this dichotomy between political parties and professionals.
And these candidates will definitely undergo a very tight selection process to test their competence, to test their professionalism, because they are going into the cabinet, they're going to be elected as ministers. So we really want to make sure that they have what it takes. They have the credibility to perform when they are put
So
into positions.
That means they will go through a very tight process of selection regarding to their competence and their professionalism. It's not about popularity at all. It's not about you are my friend, you are my foe, or you are partly can help me in the future. It's not the case. But then there's also a question whether would it be entirely clean.
Would it be entirely clean, and also how effective it is for a team of complete strangers to come together and start working together, and for all of them to be under Jokowi. But that's another thing about Jokowi. He doesn't just sit up there and tell you what to do. He actually comes down, he meddles with everyone, and he says, let's do this together. That's the kind of mentality he has. So this change is probably for the good, and he's looking to have a very strong, competent cabinet and start making changes in the country.
His team is still not complete yet. One of the key offices currently without a minister is the Energy and Mineral Resources Ministry, following the resignation of Jero Wachi earlier this month after he was named a corrupt suspect. So in that sense, a lot of things that needs to be really reviewed in terms of trying to replace Jero's position. Jero was charged with corruption following some of his past past doings. And with that, we also have another news. This time is about also not so much on cleanness, but more on democracy. As we all know, Hong Kong is facing a tough challenge now because it is trying to integrate itself with China, but at the same time, its population has different sort of thinking when it comes to how the direction of the country's political system.
And the leading academics in Hong Kong have actually come out in strong support of the student boycott of classes planned for next week as part of an ongoing pro-democracy campaign in the former British colony. And this move comes as Hong Kong universities held their opening assemblies on Tuesday with a large numbers of students wearing yellow ribbons in support of the democracy movement, while others were holding banners calling on students to boycott classes next week.
In a post on the Hong Kong Professional Teachers Union website titled "Don't Let the Striking Students Stand Alone," the statement said academics are pained and outraged at China's decision to control the selection of candidates in the 2017 elections instead of offering genuine universal suffrage. Hong Kong is supposed to be the democratic pillar for China, although it was part of China, it was included as part of China in 1997, but it runs on a dual political system. Only in Hong Kong where there's a thing called election and democracy.
And this movement comes amid of growing concern over Beijing's use of its weighty political influence in Hong Kong and fear that the territory's academic freedom would be compromised. So they are just really afraid of Beijing and how powerful it's become. And
Beijing becomes powerful economically, politically, the more is exerting its influence, political influence over Hong Kong, and this is a worrisome for those in the academics, especially the students, the younger generation of the Hong Kongers. And one of the key area that they fear is academic freedom could be compromised.
It is not a surprise. The same thing is also happening in our own country, where we've been having a little issue on the side of academic freedom, and we also had a little kind of protest demonstration last week. And it's always a worry when academic freedom gets
Mansuhkan Akta Hasutan.
That's right, to repeal the Sedition Act. It's academic freedom is something that every student, it's a given right. When you are an academician, you
yourself
do your research.
Is a student.
Yeah, you do your research, and presenting your research that's sort of an ethic. When you do your research, you find certain things, you have to put it in your paper. You have to put it on. You have to let people know what's really going on. You don't tamper with the results. But when you have a strong outside influence intervening in this. It's very, very difficult for the academicians to come up in the country.
So the outside influence, the context of it, the August 31 ruling, by August 31 ruling, China Parliament said that Beijing will vet candidates for the 2017 polls, which makes the selection of pro-democracy candidates highly unlikely, has undermined public confidence in one country, two system promise that was promised in 1997, which when Hong Kong was handed to China. And one of the interesting elements during this protest by the student is the yellow ribbon. So symbols are really important, like in Bersih is the yellow shirt. Of course, with this Hong Kong student is the yellow ribbon.
And apart from that, there are also, of course, some groups who are actually pro-Beijing in this context, and they're saying that the Hong Kong University student and student strike committee member Ting Kaki said the student movement is separate from the Occupy Central, which is from any of the territory's pan-democratic parties. And this came from the students themselves. We use our own judgment to decide whether or not the boycott was necessary, he told the news.
So they are two different camps. But at the end of the day, the reality is China is exerting its political influence to Hong Kong. To what extent would it control the academic freedom of the country? Of the region Hong Kong? That is left to be said, left to be seen. And for Hong Kong, as we all know, in 1997, the one country, two system promise is supposed to be Hong Kong is an autonomy region. Just like in any autonomy region, the political system should be separate. So in this sense, we just hope for all the best for the students and also the academicians, so that they have their own academic freedom to be protected.
As always, protect academic freedom.
That's all from us today, and we will continue our discussion with the blast from the grassroots. And I'm Arlene signing off.
This is Gowri. We'll see you later.